Hello, welcome to the Masters of Real Estate. Today, we are going to learn from Ben Baer, the CEO of Build Casa. So, Ben, welcome. How's it going, buddy?
Good. Great to be here, Nick. Good to
Yeah,
reconnect.
likewise. So, Ben, how do you introduce Build Casa to customers and as well as to investors?
Yeah. So on the customer side, really what we're doing is helping homeowners take advantage of new subdivision laws that have passed really across the country, but our initial focus is in the state of California. And what it allows them to do is get, somewhere between 50 and up to $1 million in cash for selling a piece of their extra lot space while keeping their existing house and mortgage. So we have an algorithm that identifies the underutilized properties that qualify for this new subdivision law. In California, it's called SB9. And then we reach out to the homeowners, through direct mail, through referrals, recently through a lot of press that's been coming out about the opportunity. And we make them an offer to essentially purchase the extra lot space, and we manage and facilitate the entire process. So we cover the cost of the subdivision, and we get the new lot created. We have templatized architectural designs that we're able to entitle on the new lots. And then we partner with local builders who build and sell homes on the newly created lots. From an investor perspective, I think what's interesting about what we're doing is that, there's this old Mark Twain adage that you should buy land because they're not making any more of it. Through these processes, we've found a scalable way statewide to actually create new plots of land in some of the areas where housing is particularly scarce. And obviously we're 3.5 million units short across the state of California, but particularly in these urban and suburban areas where, in many cases, there's been no new inventory, when we look since like 1993 or 2001, just because there hasn't been any land. And so I think from an investor perspective, that's really what they're excited about, is enabling the starter home generation profitably in areas where there is a major lack of supply, and particularly supply of starter homes, which are affordable to a first-time home buyer.
Thank you for sharing that, Ben. So would it be accurate to summarize that if you are listening to this and you are a homeowner in the state of California, there's a law called SB9 that allows you to, if you're a homeowner, especially in a single family home with a large plot of land, a law called SB9 allows you to subdivision that and then build another unit there. And instead of having to deal with the process of figuring all that out, you can just go to, buildcasa.com right now and from Ben's team and figuring it out.
Go to buildcasa.com, BUILDCASA, and then you can enter your address and get an instant eligibility check and an estimate of the value of the land in about 15 seconds. And then our team will reach out, we'll do a feasibility assessment, look at the comps, look at what can be built there, and really help you understand, the different pathways to getting the most value out of the land. And in some cases, that'll be just from selling the lot. And we have a captive broker internally where we can just list the lot and sell it to an end user or a builder on MLS or in our private network of buyers. And in some cases, that'll actually be through partnering with the homeowner to develop a property using our template designs on the newly created lot. And that's been a new offering for us that we've seen about a dozen people sign up for in the first month in some really high value areas. And so really it's just about, you have this trapped asset. How can we help you do well by doing good, get a huge windfall of cash, but also enable this new housing stock of starter homes that is badly needed in the community? And at a time of, high rates and a situation where, homeowners, if they sell, they can't afford an equivalent replacement home, it's been really appealing. And we have about 125 units of housing pipeline that we've created. And we've been getting through the planning approval on the subdivision in about 45 days on average. And so, what the law really allows for is you can create much smaller lots than you could before. So it effectively reduces the minimum lot size required to do a subdivision. And then there's no CEQA environmental review. There's no neighbor discretion input into the process. And on the planning side, as long as you meet the requirements, they are statutorily required to approve it. So they can't say, well, I want you to make this exterior color yellow instead of, slate. And those types of discretionary inputs into processes are really what slowed down housing across California over the past, 50 plus years.
Yeah. So now essentially, even if you have a small lot that you want to subdivision, there are options for you in process to subdivision a small lot. Your neighbors can't interfere. If it meets planning, then planning commission can't interfere. So there's an accelerated process to do it, even at a smaller scale. And it results in net new cash for the homeowner. It's a brilliant solution.
Yeah, net new cash for the homeowner. And what's exciting is that these new units can be sold separately. And so SB9 allows for you to subdivide the lot, and then you have two separate addresses. So the existing home retains its existing address. A new address is created for the new lot. And then on that new lot, you can build up to 2 units. So you could build a single family home and sell that. You could build a duplex and sell that as a rental to someone or a house hacker, or you can actually condoize both of the resulting units and sell 2 new homes on the resulting lot after subdivision.
And that's where the money comes from.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a decent comp. I think if you look at what Thomas James Homes has done in the sort of $3 million and above bucket of, finding an underutilized property in Menlo Park and knocking it down and building a $5 million modern farmhouse because they identified that parcel was underutilized. We're achieving, a similar effect, but for starter homes. And instead of having to knock the existing house down, the yield is coming from the fact that we can build 1 or 2 new units on the lot that results.
Makes sense. So let's zoom out and learn more about you and how you ended up here at Build Casa today, and with this incredible ability to help so many homeowners while solving such a critical problem. What inflection points in your life, Ben, led you to today?
So I grew up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and, in sort of a go west young man type of experience after college, I came out to the West Coast to work in startups. The first, sort of big Silicon Valley backed startup that I was a part of was called Vungle. So if you're playing Temple Run, you die at the end of the run, you watch a video to get some coins and continue to run. We were kind of the first ones to do that. It was a classic startup montage sequence where, we went from 8 people and a dog to 200 plus in 5 countries. We went from basically 0 to a $75 million run rate in 2 years. And that company ended up selling to Blackstone. If I was purely financially motivated, I think I would have just stayed in ad tech, but I've been drawn to these hard problems where, there's an intersection of technology, public policy, and a top societal issue. And so before this, I was an early employee at Spin, one of the leading electric bike and scooter sharing platforms in North America. We really differentiated by partnering with the cities, sort of a anti-Uber 1.0 approach where we would never launch without permission. We'd share data with the cities. We'd work with the local constituents. During the period in time at which everyone thought scooters were the next Uber, we sold to Ford. And so we were a subsidiary of Ford for over 3 years. And after COVID, demand had fallen by 80, 90%. People weren't going to Center City or to university campuses. And I actually took over as CEO of the subsidiary and led a spin-out process. And so after that acquisition closed in early 2022, I was looking for, another opportunity that sort of met this test of an intersection of regulation, technology, and a top societal issue. I connected with my friend Paul, who's my co-founder and I've known for 20 plus years. We're both from Pittsburgh. He had done some grad school research thesis work on, the potential to add infill housing units on underutilized parcels. And we started looking at this new law, SB9, and really what it would enable and how you could actually facilitate the development in a way where the homeowner wasn't taking on much cost, any cost or work really, because homeowners aren't developers. And so it's really asking a lot of them to build an ADU, let alone subdivide a parcel and build a new construction home or duplex as a developer. And so, part of the reason that I think SB9 has been slower for people to figure out than ADUs is just that reason, is that facilitator is really needed to finance and execute the process. And so from an inflection point perspective, I would say getting involved in Silicon Valley tech was definitely a major inflection point for me. And then identifying that, I was really passionate and would really be excited to get up every morning working on these hard problems that are at that intersection of tech, public policy, and a top societal issue. I think it's a bit of a secret sauce where folks in tech and in real estate generally look at government as an obstacle and look at them as an adversary. And for certain types of businesses, in order to be successful, you really need them to be on side with you. And so that's something that, we've focused on getting right here at Build Casa, building relationships with the mayor's office, the planning office, the DPW, the council, and to really enable the project projects to move quickly. At Spin, we won, I think, 94% of competitive city procurement contracts across the country, operating in more than 50 jurisdictions. And so, that's really where I think my, sort of expertise lies at this point, is these problems that require government coordination, but also technology and scalable execution.
Fascinating. So you ended up from Pittsburgh to essentially being a very fast growing tech company where you were part of the first 8 people and grew to 200 people that sold to Blackstone. Then another early employee at a different type of tech company in the electric scooter market that sold to Ford. And then you helped spin them out. And then eventually ended up in solving this really interesting problem in real estate.
There was a failed startup in between Vungle and Ford. But yes, that's been the general pathway for me.
So it seems like you started from like a sales perspective to early stage startup employee perspective to a C-suite to a founder perspective. So can you dig deeper into that as to, when you went from each part of the journey to the other part of the journey, what helped you from the previous phase and what did you have to relearn?
I found myself as a VP of sales and BD at 23 years old in a 200-person company. So it was definitely drinking from the fire hose. I think in general, in a startup, you're either building the thing or selling the thing. That's what it's all about. And so, I think what I have a good capability of doing is, sort of talking to a lot of people and finding a compelling value prop and then assembling the right people to execute that value prop. And one thing, it's not, systems are important. Taking sort of a SaaS venture-backed sales approach to different businesses to drive consistent pipeline growth and revenue growth is important. But a lot of it is around knowing what you know and don't know, and then finding good people early before the market fully recognizes their value and putting them in a position to succeed. So Vungle, I'm really proud that the person that I brought in as my number 2 on the sales side ultimately took over as CEO of the company, is still CEO of the Blackstone subsidiary, which is now a multi-billion-dollar ad tech company. So really, it's all about finding those good people, making sure the vision is clear, making sure that the objectives are clear, and then giving people the things that they need to run and do a better job in those individual areas than you could do yourself, and having the right alignment and incentive structures to enable that. Of the jobs I've had, chief business officer is probably the most fun of any of them, right? Because you're creating deals, making strategic partnerships, doing comms and press and public policy. Being a CEO is definitely, as you know, a different job. And there's a lot of really challenging elements to that, depending on the phase of the company that you're in. In the spin scenario, the day that I took over, I had a conversation with the CEO of Ford and said, this is a great opportunity. Shared scooter market is really struggling post-COVID. There are also a lot of city regulations that are hampering the growth in terms of limiting the number of vehicles or overly onerous rules that made profitability difficult. But we have this amazing user and operational footprint. And so we could offer a subscription access to an electric personal scooter with discounted access to the shared network and integrated maintenance and service. And what he told me was, screw that. I don't know why we bought this company in the first place. It was my predecessor that bought it, and you have 6 months to find a buyer or we're shutting it down, essentially. And so the job there was really continuing to grow and hit the revenue and profitability targets that we were striving for. I think Spin is now profitable. You can see it in the Bird S1 results that were released, but also to find a buyer and to do so in an environment where interest rates were changing, where it went from growth at all costs and SPAC to cut costs, where it's fully remote. And we had to do a massive reduction in force, which was very challenging. We had to leave the international markets, but ultimately we were able to land the plane and find a buyer and keep the Spin brand and a lot of the people and goodwill that we had built continuing.
Makes sense. So mention like 4 or 5 things that you became like really, really good at, right? One was finding extraordinary people. So let's just call it talent acquisition. Second one was creating the right culture and system and incentives in place to allow them to succeed. So let's just call that talent culture. And then you mentioned having to find a strategic buyer in a very short time frame, right? So let's just put that in the M&A bucket. And then finally, you mentioned having to deal with changing workforce and changing organization, a tough macro climate, which is where the reduction in force and, the changing market strategy, entering or exiting an international market comes in. So these four things, right? Talent acquisition, talent culture, M&A, as well as managing the team morale through a tough environment. Let's just, of these four things, which ones would you say where are areas where you feel like you can talk for hours and know better than like most or, employees or people or CEOs in that role?
What I feel very confident in is my ability to go into an organization, figure out what's working and what's not working, what the customers care about operationally, what it's going to take to scale the activity. I don't know that any of those are like rinse and repeat frameworks or systems. I really think each company is unique, and you can take someone who did an A+ job in company A and put them in company B, and they'll completely flop. And it's often like organ failure where, you're just rejected by the host because of reason A, B, or C, which is really company specific and hard to predict. I think another thing I've learned is, there's this idea in the tech world that ideas are useless and execution is everything. I think that's completely wrong. I think that if you grind for 10 years and 100 hours a week on the wrong thing, there's no pot of gold at the end of that rainbow. And so particularly in the early stages, which is where I've spent the most time and feel the most comfortable, it is around making these like small tweaks in who the customers are, the framing of the value, what the value is, in order to find that scenario where things are flying off the shelves. And so product market fit is not a constant thing. It's not a binary thing, but you can feel it when you have it. And having felt it a couple of times and been through the ride, I have a good nose for, when we're getting closer or further away from that.
Makes sense. So when you think about, 0 to 1 situation where you're figuring out who the target customers are and how do you frame the right value proposition for them, what are the mistakes that you naturally avoid when doing that?
I think talking to people that are just going to tell you what you want to hear is a mistake. And so really getting in front of unaffiliated people who fit the target customer demographic, and founder sales are great, but that can also be a red herring. Sometimes people will partner with you just because they're excited and want to help the founder, and it's not reflective of how the broader market would react. So I think you need to be, sort of inflexible in terms of the vision and where you're going and why you're doing something, but flexible in terms of how to get there and the small tweaks that you can make along the way. As a specific example, initially at Build Casa, the only offering that we had for homeowners was you can sell your backyard. We'll buy an option on the backyard. We'll give you a set price. And then at the end of the subdivision period, either we'll buy it or we'll resell it to a local builder. What we found is that, some homeowners didn't like the price that we were offering. They're like, well, I think it's worth $200,000 and you're saying it's worth $100,000. And we could pull up our financial model and run through all of the assumptions, but still they're not going to be sure that what we're offering is accurate. And so the way that we have solved that is we have a brokerage in-house. And so we'll actually do market price discovery on the land, and we'll take it out to the builder network and to MLS and see what people will pay for it. And sometimes we're surprised and people will pay a lot more than we were able to underwrite, or particularly if they're, an end user who has never seen a plot of land available in Menlo Park and, wants to build a dream home for themselves or their family. In that case, we just take a entitlement fee and we serve as the broker, and we're happy because we've helped the homeowner get the best outcome for them. In other cases, what we'll do is we'll say, well, contribute the land into this project, and we'll actually go out and we'll list the home that we're going to build for pre-sale on the open market. And if someone's able to pay 1.5 for it, then you'll get that development upside. We'll facilitate that process. And so that was a really sticky issue that we were running into again and again, just on price, that we found a couple of pathways to really have a better conversation with the homeowners, but also do it in a way that, leads to good returns for Build Casa, regardless of the scenario.
Makes sense. So talking about, the kind of an example of, how you improved your product to help your, reach product market bit faster by finding out a complaint from customers and converting it from a complaint to a feature. What's keeping you busy these days? What is your main focus these days?
Different things every day, but very focused on continuing to scale and grow the business. We started in Sacramento. We're now operating in 18 jurisdictions across the state with a focus on the South Bay, Sacramento, San Diego, and Riverside. We'll be in LA later this year as well. So geographic expansion is a big piece of it. Finding the right builder and surveyor partners in different regions and aligning them so that they're incentivized to give us better prices than they would to the general market. A big part of the value we bring, in addition to really the identification and sales and marketing, is really understanding from a pre-development perspective what's possible on a given site, understanding how to get it through the planning entitlement process. We have templatized sort of Sears home style architectural designs, but then we need good builders locally to work with. And so that's a big focus. On the public policy side, obviously there's been a lot in the news lately about SB9 and, some of the less pro-housing cities that have challenged it. And so, we're engaged with our lobbyists and local officials and housing groups to try and continue to make the regulations better. And then, finding the right people for the next phase of the company's growth.
Makes sense. So from scaling from Sacramento to 18 jurisdictions and then an entirely new market, finding good local builders, engaging in public policy and managing talent acquisition, how do you convert all those into a single bullseye goal that you're tracking? And what is that for this year, 2024?
Yeah. So, we have an internal growth and revenue target, but the most important thing we're focused on that I think is really tangible, we've gotten the approvals, we've gotten lots split, but it's really moving from a world of renderings and potential units to pictures and real units. And that is what I am most excited about and what the team is really oriented around. And that's something that is very tangible and very simple as a true north for this year. The true north for the company more broadly is enabling the construction of 100,000 units in existing neighborhoods.
100,000 units sounds like a big number. How did you end up with that number, Ben?
I'd like to say there was some scientific process to it, but we sort of just looked at, how many homes are the big builders building? Some of them are building like 50K plus homes per year across the country. And so if we can't get to 100,000 in, some period of time, then we haven't reached the potential. And my thesis is that you have a bunch of big public company builders that are all focused on greenfield development, a bunch of people in New York and Los Angeles funding 100-mile outside of Houston build-to-rent communities where they would never want to live. And so I think that there's definitely room for at-scale infill builder that's delivering starter homes where people do want to live. And so that's really what we're trying to achieve here.
So essentially one of your arguments is it's a new sub-industry class in the builder industry, specifically focused on infill builders that build casa could potentially become a major player in or even dominate.
Mm-hmm. And I think the mom and pops have really these starter homes in infill conditions. Most of the institutional focus has been on luxury builds, right? Where obviously there's a lot more spread that's been challenged by interest rates. And then on multifamily, which is, more tax efficient, more well understood, but not penciling by and large across the country in most cases. And the challenge has always been so much of it is local, right? So it's about having the right trades and, knowing who the right person is at the planning department to bug, having the right person who is an electrician, but also is a plumber, but also will do the drywall. No one needs to know whether that's, exactly what's happening in terms of getting to the desired result. And what these new laws have done is really allow us to create a standardized process for creating these new building opportunities, but then relying on the local builders' expertise and trade base and knowledge in order to execute the process.
Makes sense. So for a listener listening to this in summer of 2024, what are the top 3 things they should reach out to you to help you or the Build Casa team about? Because you're working on so many things. So if you had to prioritize like, hey, summer 2024, when you're listening to this, if you have solutions to these 3, reach out to us.
Yeah. So, if you are a existing homeowner, then reach out to us phone or on the website, and we can tell you whether your property is eligible for the process. If you're a builder, same thing, reach out to advisors at buildcasa.com or through our website, or you can reach me directly at bb@buildcasa.com. And we really are basically in a process now where we're partnering with top builder partners in each geographic region for these more joint venture style projects. And then if you're a home buyer, then, we have new homes that are on the market in areas where there haven't been many in a long time. Those look just like typical homes on the market that you see on Zillow, and you can reach out and buy one of them. And so that's definitely an audience that, we're eager to serve as well.
So yeah, homeowners, reach out to buildcasa.com. Builders, shoot a note to Ben at bb@buildcasa.com. And home buyers, check out buildcasa.com to see inventory you can think about buying.
Yeah, we don't have anything on it for the home buyers on buildcasa.com, but if they're on Zillow or Redfin, you'll see the listings on there as they pop up. And we just took a reservation on our first duplex that we're actually partnering with a builder to construct in San Diego a couple of weeks ago. It's an Amazon employee that's looking to move down to San Diego to be closer to his wife's family and house hack. We have a duplex on the market now in Sacramento, and there should be far more units available for sale over the coming year as well.
Yeah, it seems like you're also expanding, right? You said you're also acquiring talent. So right now at Build Casa, what is your talent strategy between onshore, nearshore, and offshore? Mm-hmm. And where is the growth coming from? Like, do they have to be in California? Do they have to be in similar time zone, or can they be offshore?
Yeah. So we have all of the above. The core team is located here in Oakland. We also have a salesperson on the ground in Los Angeles. And then, we work with a data science shop that I've worked with a couple times previously that's based in like Nashville and Brazil. We have some civil engineers on staff in Guadalajara, Mexico that help with some of the feasibility and site assessment. As you know, we're not in the 2021 world where you can just hire a $20 million team in San Francisco for every type of business. And so we've had to be creative. We've also had a lot of success with, for things like underwriting and biz ops, getting recent college grads, some of whom have been remote, places like Florida, and some of whom are more local, coming out of Berkeley.
So let's come back to areas where people can learn from you and get coaching. So 3 questions. The first one is like, when they learn from you, what has been the main operating principle in your life? Like, what principle has helped you make the decisions you've made, whether or not they've turned out ideally?
Yeah. So I think if you're purely financially motivated, the best thing to do, 2 things. One, the single best thing to do over the last 10 years from like a effort versus expected value perspective has just been to get a job at like Facebook or Google or Microsoft. And you're going to be making, if you're in a senior sales or technical role, $500,000, $750,000 a year, getting liquid stock options. People have done really well doing that with much less stress than being a founder. I've always been more drawn to early stage startups where I can personally have an impact on the outcome, because that just makes me a lot more excited to get up every day. In that context, if you're early career and your goal is money, the best thing is to find a growing industry, work at a company where you get in, where it's sort of working already, but you still have exposure to the founders, and a lot of opportunity is opened up through scaling, where you can skip a couple steps in your career path. And that's how you go from being a junior person to a VP in 3 to 5 years, versus at a place like Ford, you would work your way up to 35 years in order to experience that type of career growth. And then if you were just focused on making money, like in my case, I would have just stayed in advertising. There have been few business models that have been more powerful with the emergence of mobile than selling app install for a free app for real money and taking a rake on that. And so just a hugely scalable opportunity where the people that I know that have stayed in that world, some of them have made 8 or 9 figures just by staying in ad tech, doing the thing over and over again, continuing to grow as the industry grows. But for me personally, I need to be extremely excited to think about the problem and work with the people I'm working with and go in every day. I really value working in person with people as well. And I value learning. And so, I've taken on a lot of different industries, and you've got to talk to people who have been through it, but there is some benefit to coming to it with fresh eyes as well.
So it seems like your main operating principle is working on an impactful thing, working with others in an impactful in-person environment, and seeing the results of your work come out alive.
Well said.
And what's the number one mistake you see others making?
I think that especially high achievers throughout high school and college, it's very common that you continue to achieve without really understanding the why behind that achievement. It's, never something that's completely solved, but, you can get out into the world, and if you're just focused on achievement and sort of the next chip, the next star on the wall, you can end up in a place where you've worked really hard and you're not doing something that you're intrinsically motivated to do. And I think it's easy to hit a wall. And that happens to a lot of people in investment banking and consulting and often working at large companies. That would be something to look out for, is where you have to make this change from external motivation to internal motivation, and really doing that thoughtfully.
Makes sense. And last question to close everything out. What's the most important skill you would teach your loved ones, and how would you teach them?
My grandpa always said, you want to listen more than you talk. And so, I think there's just so much to learn from people that above you in your career, but also people that have nothing to do with what you're doing. And so really taking the time to listen, ask questions, understand where people are coming from, but also have a strong viewpoint. Strong views, weakly held, I think is a good principle. You don't want to be drifting with each conversation that you have where person A says this and person B says this, then you just sort of oscillate between them. So that would be something that I think is a valuable skill generally. And, again, understanding your why or your intrinsic motivation for why you're pursuing what you're doing. And for all of us, that can include selfish reasons and also pro-social reasons that are bigger than ourselves, but just being honest with yourself about that.
Find your why, listen to others, but don't be too swayed.
Yeah.
Perfect. That was Ben Baer. If you're a homeowner who wants to list their property, or a builder who can help homeowners, reach out to them on buildcasa.com. If you want to talk about real estate, shoot me a note on nick@home.llc. Thanks, everyone.